Charlie Kirk Show starts now.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. Going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
A new CBS News poll shows a majority of Americans support imposing tariffs on imported goods, and more have an optimistic view of the economy since the election.
From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to.
You have tariffs on a whole number of products.
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off.
If, in fact, you're prepared to take your tariffs off, why wouldn't you have that negotiation and that conversation now before any tariffs get put in place?
Well, we've had this conversation for over the last month. We don't want tariffs.
But why is that not already? I guess my question is, why has all of that not already happened? And does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off like in the next minute if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
A tariff is a beautiful thing, but it's got a bad image. It needs you to fix the image. A tariff, we stop wars with tariffs. I mean, I had cases where I told a country they were being very aggressive with another country. It had nothing to do with us. I just don't like seeing dead people, okay? And they were going to go to war, and I said, if you go to war, and they do a lot of business with the United States, I'm putting 100% tariff on everything you do, any business you do with us. No, this has nothing to do. I said, it does have. I stopped a war. Will I get Nobel Prizes? Never. I mean, look what we did with the Abraham Accords, how good that was. But you can stop wars with tariffs.
And the evidence we have so far indicates potentially that Disney and ABC were making employment decisions based on race and gender, including having effectively race-defined affinity groups within the company. We have evidence that they put quotas in place based on specific demographics. If the evidence does, in fact, play out, it shows that they were engaged in race and gender-based discrimination. That's a very serious issue at the FCC that could fundamentally go to their character qualifications to even hold a license. But we're going to follow the facts wherever they go.
Our great secretary, you have done. Stand up, please, Christy. Stand up. Christy Nome and Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that want to. They don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought back. Let's bring them back. You've done a fantastic job, and please thank everybody. Homeland Security, thank everybody. Appreciate it.
In that referendum in Wisconsin, then you should have brought the SAVE Act, which is a voter suppression bill that we strongly oppose, to the floor this week. You could have done it. You could have done it today. You could do it tomorrow. Dare you to bring the SAVE Act to the floor.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world.
Every day, there's a battle for your mind raging. Information coming from every angle with the will to deceive. Fear not. You found the place for truth. The voice of a generation that still has the will to believe in the greatest country in the history of the world. This is the Charlie Kirk Show. Buckle up. Here we go.
Okay, everybody, radio stations across the country, honored to be with you as always. Happy Friday. We are here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, holding down the fort. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. In just a second, we are going to have the great and legendary Brandon Tatum join us right out of the gate. A little bit of rare to get to a guest that quickly, but something major happened yesterday on campus at University of California, Davis, at UC Davis. And so we'll be with Brandon Tatum momentarily. But look at the main stories. Wall Street Journal, stocks suffer steepest slide since 2020. Tariff shock waves circle the globe. The stock market does matter. 62% of Americans have something that they have worked hard for in the stock market. Should not be diminished, should not be minimized. Now, markets did know that this was coming. Markets knew that there was going to be some sort of a recalibration. There was going to be some sort of a hiccup, and you're seeing it and experiencing it. But President Trump ran on tariffs, and let me bring you into the room of the calculus. If he knows that he wants to do tariffs to get better trade deals and rebalance the deficit, if he knows he has to rebuild American manufacturing on one side, and he also simultaneously knows that he is going to have the greatest liberator of economic growth, which is tax cuts and deregulation, which one would you do first? Would you do the tough stuff first or the easy popular stuff first? So President Trump, knowing he has to do tariffs and that people voted to have him do tariffs to reindustrialize the country and onshore jobs, he said and has decided to do the tough fight first. Get it out of the way. Shock and awe. Now, out of all the tariffs that President Trump has applied, the ones on China are the most bold of them all. The boldest, I should say. You see, the Chinese Communist Party could very well go into an economic depression over this. Now, whether or not we will go into a recession, we will see. But the Chinese Communist Party is so reliant and so dependent. They are so married to the American market that they require unfettered free trade, even though we do not have free trade with the Chinese Communist Party. We are not able to open our banks in China. Many of our goods and services and our products, we're not able to import many of our vehicles. It is not a reciprocal market. Every U.S. tech company is restricted in China. Out of all of the tariffs that President Trump has issued, the one that is making the markets the most jittery, the one that is making the markets most nervous is China. The Chinese Communist Party is showing its hand. They know that this could mean the end of the current Chinese Communist Party uptick over the last 25 years. They know it, they sense it, and they feel it. But understand the sequence of events, because what's coming after this is going to be almost nothing but good news. You start with the tariffs, and then what is coming next? Deregulation, drill baby drill, oil permits, and then no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, extending the Trump tax cuts, major middle class tax cut, heavy machinery depreciation. So you start with the stuff that is going to kind of be a little bit of a gut punch to the markets, and then you build your way up from there. All the while, what tariffs do is they are a forcing function to redomicile companies to the United States. These systemic changes will help us long term. President Trump is looking to implement a long-term systemic change to help make our country stronger. But it will undoubtedly come with some bumps and some hiccups, and for some people, some short-term economic pain. What is going on here, what is unfolding on the markets, which right now is a red bloodbath, is a moral question. Are we willing to delay the immediate sugar high of gratification, even though we know it is unsustainable and bad for us, to break through on the other side, to have a vibrant and strong and long-term durability? That is the question in front of us. And ever since the Greenspan put, ever since the tradition of easy money and the influx of artificially low interest rates, the stock market has gone up and up and up, and we have seen us enter into an era where we don't make stuff, but we certainly consume it. You cannot print wealth, and the trade deficits coupled with our national debt have left us in a rather precarious situation. You know how easy it would be for President Trump to just punt, to delay, and not confront this problem head on. America has for decades operated on a plan of trading U.S. dollars for things produced in other countries. We trade paper for goods. We trade paper for goods. If people ever decide they don't want the paper anymore, we are helpless. China makes things. They engineer them. They design them. They have tens, if not hundreds of millions of people that are in the manufacturing sector. And we believed the propaganda from the free trade absolutists that you are somehow liberated and an enlightened economy if you do nothing but brain work but no body work, as the great Victor Davis Hanson said on our program. Instead, you need both. You need both the brain and the body of an economy. In fact, despite what all of the experts and the prognosticators told us, we are about to see the greatest hardware demand that humanity has had since the Industrial Revolution. Almost all of the wealth that has driven the stock market over the last 10 years, outside of Apple is the exception, has largely been software breakthroughs. Tesla could be the other exception. But you look at Google, you look at Amazon, you look at Meta or Facebook, you look at Netflix. So much of that is software breakthroughs. It's applications, social media data companies. Now, NVIDIA, to their credit, does do a fair amount of hardware, but it's coupled with some software advancements. If we are serious about entering this golden era of America, we have to strip ourselves of the old economic alliances and worldview, the allegiances that have plagued us for quite some time. And the easy decision, the simple decision would be delay it. Extend the good times. Who cares? Draw down the inheritance. It's not our problem. And understand that during COVID, during the lockdowns, we saw on display the instant gratification moral issue. The instant gratification during the lockdowns was print as much money as you can, flood the zone with cheap money, inflate the market. Who cares if your 15-year-old grandkid is going to commit suicide? Who cares if they're going to get fat? Live for the moment. We baby boomers have earned it, and we are going to sell our kids off. And it doesn't matter if they'll be indebted and sick and helpless and abused. That was the moral decision made during COVID. Now we are finally embracing a delayed gratification strategy, one that built the West, and it is not necessarily going to be warmly received of the people that are used to sugar highs and dopamine hits. This is the tough stuff. And on the other side will be a country that can last another 250 years. Rough greens. Ever see your dog slowing down or having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add rough greens to your dog's food for 90 days, and you'll see changes that will amaze you, guaranteed. Invented by naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, Rough Greens wants to invite you and your puppy to the Rough Greens 90-Day Challenge. That's Rough Greens, and put promo code Kirk just to cover shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens at ruffgreens.com/Kirk. That is ruffgreens.com/Kirk. Fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag for you today. ruffgreens.com, promo code Kirk. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. We have grown soft. It's time for us to build the muscle to endure hard times. We'll be right back.
From the campus to the car, the bullhorn to the microphone, it's the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody. Private student loan debt in America is a major problem. Why Refi, which is the sponsor of our campus tour. By the way, next week I'll be at University of South Carolina. I'll be in Purdue. I'll be at Illinois State University, University of Illinois, and Michigan State University. It's whyrefi.com. They help make all of that possible. If you go to whyrefi.com, you can read testimonials from other people who have been where you are and how they've escaped. You can even see what their monthly payments were versus what they are now. Just call 888-WHY-REFI-34 or log on to whyrefi.com. That's whyrefi.com. May not be available in all 50 states. Many clients are not even able to make the minimum monthly payment on their private student loans when they contact whyrefi.
That is YREFY.com. If you have distressed or defaulted private student loans, nobody is coming to bail you out. So go to YREFY.com. That is YREFY.com. So check it out right now, YREFY.com. Bad credit is accepted. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? Go to YREFY.com. That is YREFY.com. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. Be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to our podcast. This is the great Rick Santelli from CNBC, who, of course, had the original Chicago Tea Party rant. Let's play cut 364.
Ultimately, if you live in the U.S. or you live in Europe or you live in China, ultimately what goes on at home is very important.
We are the most dynamic economy in the world.
Money, and much of that money we spent was in debt. The debt was financed by foreigners.
Some of that money.
They enabled us, just like the Fed enabled us with those capital accounts. I'm saying there is a dark side to the trade deficits in a different way, I think, than Trump looks at it. I look at it like it does underscore and underpin a type of financial behavior that in the long term hurts us.
That financial behavior that Rick Santelli is pinpointing beautifully is that we will import piles of plastic that we do not need. We will no longer make stuff here. And regardless of the consequences to our own citizenry, we will continue to trade paper for stuff. Paper for stuff. You see, the one advantage that we have is that when a trade war escalates, is that traditionally the country that is in the trade deficit will almost always win the trade war because we have far more cards than the country that is in the trade surplus. So China is actually very reliant on us right now. So much of their material wealth has been built on trading with us. And we have not decided to do anything about it. And also understand, it is easy and quite honestly intellectually lazy to blame Donald Trump for this. Blame the people that created the mess. He is attempting to fix it. And it's going to take a Herculean effort to go through the fact that a lot of people are losing money right now. And I am not diminishing that. I am not minimizing it. A lot of people are losing 10, 15% of their earnings. I believe they will get it back and then some because of the tax cuts, the deregulation, the drill baby drill, the no tax on tips. The tax bill is going to boost the psyche and the mentality. And you have to look long term. But he is attempting to fix the inherited, broken global trade order. We have sold our wealth away. And we're starting to see a reinvestment of foreign direct investment of building and manufacturing, well over $5 trillion that is going to be spent into this country. And remember, when Ronald Reagan was president, there was a short-term economic dip before the massive roaring 1980s. This is Stephen Miller on Laura Ingraham, play cut 366.
All of that manufacturing, all of that industry was ripped apart by our elites, shipped to foreign countries, and then they sent us the bill. They said, you have to protect Korea, you have to protect Europe, you have to protect Canada, you have to protect Japan. We won't take your cars, we won't take your agriculture, we'll take away your steel industry, your aluminum industry, your copper industry, your electronics industry. So what President Trump is saying is, these are the injustices you have to remedy. This isn't just about moving around some lines on a ledger. This is about remedying the systemic injustice that says the streets of America are filled with European cars and Japanese cars, but the streets of Europe and Japan have no American cars. This is about saying that the American steel industry, which once built and sustained the modern world.
This is another important point. I think at its core, a lot of Americans appreciate certain forms of trade and importation. If your country is full of great artisans and craftsmen, and you're importing something
that is incredibly unique, something that that nation is known for. For example, Colombian coffee. Fair enough. Or Canadian maple syrup. French wine is a great example. The tariffs are not targeted towards that. I mean, they might be caught up in that, but the essence of the tariffs is not trying to go after Italian olive oil. It's not trying to destroy the native cultural export of a certain nation. No, instead, what we have a problem with is trading when a nation becomes an industrial mill of unnecessary piles of plastic, unnecessary amount of garbage that then floods our streets, our communities, and we have no attachment with what we're actually buying. We become so hyper materialistic. We are not here to try and stop French wine from coming to the United States. In fact, though, I will say the wine producers in Fredericksburg, Texas, and Napa Valley would love that. Instead, we want American products, the stuff that we're good at making, which is a couple things here or there, to be able to go into other nations without penalty or tariff. Orrin Cass joins us next.
Back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. A number of members on President Trump's National Security Council are off the job over concerns about their loyalty. Those concerns were reportedly raised by journalist Laura Loomer during a meeting with President Trump at the White House earlier this week.
He has
friend. She makes recommendations of things and people. And sometimes I listen to those recommendations like I do with everybody. I listen to everybody and then I make a decision. But I saw her yesterday. She was at the ceremony. And she'll always have something to say, usually very constructive.
What did she recommend?
She recommended certain people for jobs.
Adding to the administration, not
adding,
but not firing?
Well, she'll recommend that too. But yesterday she recommended some people for jobs.
Did she have anything to do with the NSC aides who were ousted?
No, doesn't matter.
The Hill reports the Senior Director of Intelligence, the Senior Director of Legislative Affairs, and the Director of Technology and National Security are among the recent NSC firings. Plus, the Washington Post reporting the Director of the U.S. National Security Agency was fired on Thursday. His name is Tim Haw. He also is the head of U.S. Cyber Command. His deputy at the NSA was reportedly dismissed as well and reassigned to the Pentagon's Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Happening today, the U.S. Senate is set to start a marathon session aimed at funding President Trump's agenda. The spending plan will include extending tax cuts and finding spending cuts. When it comes to spending cuts, Senate Republicans are expected to struggle to approve enough cuts to offset the multi-trillion-dollar price tag of the tax cuts. So far, all Republicans but Kentucky Senator Rand Paul are on the same page with working to hammer out a budget framework. Overall, today's debate is simply a small sign of progress, as it could take months for the Senate and the House to find common ground on a measure that enacts tax cuts and spending decreases that can pass in both houses. Looming over the negotiation is estimated cuts of around $5 trillion over 10 years and an historic national debt that stands at more than $36.6 trillion. That's a quick check of your headlines.
Just watch history happen. Make some. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, there's a lot of excitement in D.C. right now as we start the year, but I wanted to talk to you about something just as exciting happening outside the D.C. Beltway, a revolution in the states. It's the education freedom movement. It's real, it's growing, and growing because some states, as they should, are putting parents in charge of the education of our kids. Everyone knows that education has the power to change a kid's life. And anyone who's raised a child knows each has different needs, learning styles, and God-given talents. The fact is, parents know their own children best. They know what's best for their development and future. Education freedom legislation puts parents, not zip codes, and politicians in charge of these important family decisions. It's why I strongly support making universal education a reality for every parent in every state. To find out where your state legislature stands, go to educationfreedomusa.com now. That's educationfreedomusa.com now. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network, educationfreedomusa.com now. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com to help us make sense of the tariffs and the philosophy behind them is Oren Cass, the chief economist at the American Compass. Oren, great to see you. Oren, what is your take on President Trump's tariff announcements? But even more broadly, let's start with why are tariffs a good idea for the United States of America to implement?
Well, at the end of the day, I think tariffs are important because making things matters. I've found you have to start all the way back there because we've gone through, 30 or 40 years where economists and policymakers said making things doesn't matter. We're going to have a free trade system where we are perfectly happy if all of our manufacturing jobs go to China. They'll make cheap stuff for us and we'll find something else to do. And what we've seen is that's a terrible model. It is terrible for working people who see good jobs leave and not so good jobs replace them. It's terrible for the economy. We've seen less innovation, lower growth, and it's certainly terrible for our national security. If you can't make stuff, you can't defend the country with bowling alleys. And so the entire argument for free trade and just saying you don't care where things get made, if that's not right, then in fact, you probably do need some sort of tariff. You need a finger on the scale that says all things equal, we would rather things be made here. And by having a tariff, you change prices a little bit so that people deciding where to build, where to make things will think harder about doing them here in America.
What do you have to say to critics that will say, well, tariffs are a tax and it will raise prices on everyday American middle-class consumers?
Well, tariffs are a tax, but at the end of the day, you have to raise revenue from somewhere. So if you have more revenue coming in from a tariff, you can also reduce some other tax instead. You can also reduce our entire, our enormous deficit if you want to. So I don't think we should choose, yes, we do want a tariff, or no, we don't, based on the fact that it's a tax. We should think about the goal that we have. And if the goal that we have is to encourage people to find ways to make things here, then we do want that to show up in prices. And what we've seen historically is that when you actually do this, the result is that people do come make stuff here. And once people invest here, they can make it very efficiently. I mean, look at Japanese cars. They all used to be imported from Japan. It was the Reagan administration that basically forced Japan to send Honda and Toyota to come build cars in America instead. No one's walking around complaining that Toyotas and Hondas are too expensive. We're happy that we have them investing here and hundreds of thousands of jobs as a result.
So the consensus of Wall Street right now is that these tariffs will create a bitter, ongoing trade war of which there will be no resolution. Comment on the details of these tariffs, President Trump's strategy, and any feedback you might have.
Well, I think it's important to notice that there are kind of three different tariffs that he's pursuing. One is China. And, he has at this point come in and put very high tariffs on China. They're getting up toward 50 or 60%. He has also endorsed Trump, and this is a bipartisan position at this point, that we should revoke what's called permanent normal trade relations, that we should sort of permanently say we don't want free trade with China. China is an adversary. China is not a market economy. And so I would expect to see that trading relationship go downhill. And frankly, I think we should want it to go downhill. That doesn't concern me at all in terms of what the long-term strategy is. The second piece is the kind of global 10% tariff. And that's the piece that I think fits the view that I was describing at the beginning, that if we have a preference for making things in America, then we should want to have some sort of tariff that puts a finger on the scale. And if other countries want to do the same thing, I think we should say that's reasonable. Tariffs at that level will create some friction that I think we should want in the system that encourages domestic production. It's not going to ruin the global economy or whatever else. And then the third piece, which I think is the most complicated, is what they're calling these reciprocal tariffs, where they went country by country and looked at how big a trade deficit do we have with the country, how big is the imbalance. And the bigger that imbalance is, the bigger the tariff we're going to put on you. And I think my interpretation is that is clearly what I would call a negotiating tariff. What they're saying is, look, if we can get trade back to balance, we would love to get rid of these tariffs. We would love to have no extra tariff on you and have balanced trade with you. What we're not going to tolerate anymore is this situation where we have highly imbalanced trade. And I think what you'll see and what will be in the best interests of other countries is they would much rather work that out and have balanced trade than have a trade war. That's better for them and it's better for us. And so what I hope we're moving toward and what the Trump administration is pushing toward is, look, we can have a big free trade zone of market democracies that all commit to balanced trade, that have very low tariffs, and that keep China out. And that would be a much better economy for the United States. And I think it would be a very good arrangement for our allies as well.
So if President Trump decided to ignore this problem and do nothing, I'm curious what would actually end up happening, which is the further deindustrialization of America. You've been studying the Reagan years, and in order to get inflation under control, they sparked a recession. Tell us any parallels that we might see in the ensuing prosperity that happened.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at how all the sort of, what I call very serious people who spend their time pontificating about our politics, they usually say, our democracy is broken. Politicians don't make hard choices. They won't accept costs or ask people to make sacrifices to pursue the common good. And here you have the Trump administration doing exactly that. They're acknowledging that there are costs to this, but they're saying it's worthwhile because we have very big challenges and it is going to take real effort to get out of them. I think the last time we really did that was when Ronald Reagan came into office. We were in this period of what was called stagflation. Inflation was very high, growth was very low. And what Reagan and the chair of the Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, did was they shocked the economy. The interest rate went up to 20%, if you can imagine that. Unemployment went up to about 10%. The S&P 500 went down 40%. This was all early in Reagan's first term. And it took a long time to turn back around. By 1984, on Election Day in 1984, the market was lower than it had been on Election Day in 1980. Unemployment was still above 7%. And Reagan won probably I believe the biggest re-election landslide since George Washington. I mean, if you explain to people what the problem is, what it's going to take to solve it, and then you actually do what you say you're going to do, and you can show that you're on the right track, I think that's what the American people want, and it's what we should want from our leaders.
So what would you consider to be a good resolution with some of these negotiating tariffs? No tariffs at all? No boundaries or barriers? There's a debate right now of what does success look like? Because some of these tariffs are so extremely high. Is that going to be the new normal? In your estimation, for the American worker, what would be the best resolution there?
So I think the best resolution is that we get to balanced trade. And what that means is that trade is working the way it's supposed to, the way that we have sold it to workers all along, right? When you hear politicians or economists tell people we should have free trade, what do they say? We're going to have better opportunities for better American jobs, making more things for the rest of the world. We're going to specialize in the things we can make best. Other places will specialize in the things they can make best. That all sounds great. I would love for that to be the case. That's not what we got. Instead, we got a world where we stopped making things and those jobs and those factories moved to overseas. The rest of the world made stuff for us, but we didn't get to trade that for stuff that we made for the rest of the world. And that's not some weird fluke or magical effect. It's really because of policies that other countries choose, policies that they are pursuing because they want to make things. They know that making things matters, and they want to sell them into the American market. And so what I'd like to see us do is use these tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs for negotiations, to make it very clear that that kind of arrangement that was not good for Americans is no longer an option. If countries try to pursue that, they are going to see real consequences. But there is another way that would be better for them, and it would be better for us, and it would look like them changing their policies. Instead of pursuing policies to try to take advantage of the U.S., to try to take the jobs into their countries, to grow by exporting into our country and not buying anything from us, what they should be doing is asking, what are the policies we can pursue that create balanced trade? Maybe that's like in the case of Japan. We're actually going to tell some of our companies and create policies that lead them to go invest more in America. Maybe it's going to be they pursue policies to buy a lot more from America. There's a lot they can do if we make it so that that's what they want to do. And I think that should be the goal.
Oren, I want to keep you for another segment here, but you gained a lot of notoriety around calculating how many weeks a single income family father presumably had to work in a year to support his family. Can you tease that for about a minute, and we'll pick it up after the break?
Yeah, sure, because I think there's still a lot of debate about what has been happening for working families. There are a lot of economists who look at their data and they say, working families have never had it better. Maybe wages haven't gone up a lot, but they haven't gone down. Stuff is, cheap and plentiful. You can get an iPhone if you want. So we don't see what the problem is. And that clearly just didn't match with reality, with what people were experiencing. And so, I've tried to find another way to look at it that measures, okay, well, what does a job actually pay? And how much of the stuff you really need for middle-class security will it cover? And from that perspective, you see that there really is a real problem that has emerged in the past few decades.
Oren, please stay right there. Everybody, email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. What are your thoughts on President Trump's tariffs? How is this impacting you? What are you thinking about? I want to hear from you, the base, our audience, about how you are processing what is happening. ReliefFactor.com. That is 100% drug-free Relief Factor. Knee pain, back pain, joint pain, elbow pain. Take a look at it right now at ReliefFactor.com. When you hear the term living better, what do you think about? More money, a bigger house, maybe a yacht. What about how you feel physically? How you wake up each day or how you sleep? Give their 3-week quick starter try. It's only $19.95, less than $1 a day. And it just takes a simple phone call. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is the number 1-800-4RELIEF. Wherever you're hurting in 3 weeks or even days, Relief Factor can give you a chance to rediscover the true meaning of living better again. Visit ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is the number 1-800-4RELIEF. So take a look at it right now. ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. It doesn't just mask pain temporarily. It helps reduce or even eliminate pain altogether. So give their 3-week quick start a try. Only $19.95. So ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. So take a look at it right now at ReliefFactor.com. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. How are you thinking about these tariffs, the trade war, and the market sell-off? The stakes are very high. President Trump is looking long-term, and there is risk involved, but he's putting the American worker first. Email me, freedom@charliekirk.com.
Patriots love him. Leftists hate him. Nobody ignores him. It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com, and become a member, members.charliekirk.com. Reminder, I will be at University of South Carolina on Monday, University of Illinois on Tuesday, Illinois State University on Tuesday, 1 day off, and then Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. And then we will wrap up the week at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. So that is 5 events coming up next week. The week after that, we will be at Boise State University. I will be in Colorado, and also Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. And then the following week, we will be in College Station, Texas at Texas A&M University, University of Texas A&M, whichever sequence they use, and then University of Wyoming in Laramie, Wyoming. So we are all over the place. We are on the ground. We are pushing forward. We are building the movement with great speed and tenacity. Coming up in the second hour, it's my favorite hour of the week, where you guys get to come on this program and ask questions only if you're a member, members.charliekirk.com. Be right back, everybody. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Are you rethinking your kid's educational path, wondering if their current school truly supports your family's values? You're not alone, and the Herzog Foundation is here to help. Visit readlion.com to access must-read articles, and don't forget to read up on the Lion's daily and weekly newsletters. It's amazing. It's free of charge. It's a wonderful resource for all parents out there. We work very closely with them at Turning Point Academy. The Herzog Foundation is your trusted guide to navigate these changes. Go to readlion.com. That is readlion.com. Stay informed, stay equipped, and shape your child's future. So go to readlion.com. Oren Cass continues with us, chief economist from the American Compass. So, Oren, how many weeks of labor a year does it require a father or a dad in order to sustain a family of 4 in 2025?
So my best estimate, and actually we looked at this kind of before you got the biggest COVID inflation, because that obviously threw things off in a lot of ways. But if you take the kind of core basics of middle class security, which I would define as health insurance, housing, that's sort of, typical average housing, transportation, operating a car, being able to pay for tuition at a public university in your state, and affording the food that your family needs. And if you ask how many weeks of work for the typical male worker does that take, in modern America now it's well above 52. It's well above 60, in fact, which is a problem. There obviously only being 52 weeks in a year, and it didn't used to be that way. If you go back and look at the 1980s, the sort of comparable package of stuff that you needed for middle class security, you could buy with about 40 weeks of work.
And in order for us to be able to restore that balance, what is required from an economic policy perspective beyond tariffs? What else would you be recommending for this administration to embrace?
Well, I think for one thing, it's really important to focus on what I would call the supply side. So, tariffs obviously created incentive to come and build more here in the United States. We also have to do a lot more to then help people do that. And some of that is things like better tax policy. We need, to deregulation. We also need a lot of workforce training. I think education is one of the most important places that we can be doing a lot better. Right now, we have a model that sort of just says, look, we're going to try to get you into college. And we hope that works for you, but that's pretty much all we do. And the reality is that does not work for the vast majority of people. Either they don't go to college at all, or they don't complete college, or even if they do, a large share, can't find a job that's the kind of job that it's typically for people with a college degree. And so I think what we need is to invest much more heavily in other pathways that actually connect people to jobs, that help cover the cost of their training, that, put them into community college programs that actually give them real skills. And obviously that's going to be very good for them. That's going to ensure that, those younger workers are getting pretty quickly to a place where they feel like they can start a family. And it's going to be incredibly important for the employers, for these companies that we're asking, please come build here. I'm not sure we can do that and then just say, but all we have for you to hire are college dropouts and English majors. I think it will speed along this transition if we have the right program, so that we make sure we're preparing workers to be productive in this kind of economy.
Oren, in closing here, the trade, let's just say, situation puts a lot of our audience in a little bit place of anxiety. Any message to them of everyday retail investors that are quite worried about the effects of the application of tariffs?
Well, if you're talking about investments and the stock market, I think it's important to say that there is certainly a sort of adjustment going on here. I mean, everybody knows that globalization was very good for corporate profits. If the goal was to maximize corporate profits, then telling companies they could just shut down their American operations, they could stop dealing with American workers, and they could just set up shop in China. There's no question that drove a lot of profit, and that drove a lot of appreciation in stock prices. And so if we're turning that around, if we're reversing that, we should expect that to have an effect on corporations. But just as it had a really negative effect on workers, I would expect this to have a much more positive effect on workers. And the reality is that if you look at the long term, it's not that whatever is good for corporations is good for America. It's that whatever is good for America is going to be good for for corporations as well. And if we can get our house in order and actually have a more productive economy, a growing economy, and a healthier nation and a healthier society, I think in the long run, that's good. That's going to be plenty good for investors as well. But we really do have to focus on getting our ducks in order first.
Oren, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Become a member today, members.charliekirk.com to come on this show next hour, members.charliekirk.com.
America's Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet?
No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored.
And it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Getter.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Getter chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Getter friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth,
and we're doing it on Getter
every single day.
So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community.
Newsbreak. I'm Terrence Bates. U.S. stock markets are hoping to bounce back today after what experts are calling a tariff-induced free fall on Thursday. The losses are among the worst in the last decade, with the Dow losing some 1,600 points and unfortunately continuing to take losses today. The S&P 500 dropped nearly 5% and the NASDAQ hemorrhaged some 6%. Everything from crude oil to big stocks to the value of the U.S. dollar against other currencies are feeling the effects of the Trump tariffs. It's an issue Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed during a meeting with fellow NATO members who likely gave him an earful about President Trump's tariffs.
Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules. So I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States. We have to be a country that thinks we're the largest consumer market in the world, and yet the only thing we export is services. And we need to stop that. We need to get back to a time where we're a country that can make things, and to do that, we have to reset the global order of trade.
China is among the first countries to push back against the tariffs with its own reciprocal 34% duty on all U.S. imports starting next week. Other trade partners are weighing a response as well. A number of members on President Trump's National Security Council are off the job over concerns about their loyalty. Those concerns were reportedly raised by journalist Laura Loomer during a meeting with President Trump at the White House earlier this week.
She makes recommendations of things and people, and sometimes I listen to those recommendations like I do with everybody. I listen to everybody, and then I make a decision. But I saw her yesterday. She was at the ceremony, and she'll always have something to say, usually very constructive.
What did she recommend?
She recommended certain people for jobs.
Adding to the administration, not
adding.
But not firing?
Well, she'll recommend that too. But yesterday she recommended some people for jobs.
Did she have anything to do with the NSC aides who were ousted?
No, doesn't matter.
The Hill reports the Senior Director of Intelligence, the Senior Director of Legislative Affairs, and the Director of Technology and National Security are among the recent NSC firings. Plus, the Washington Post is reporting the Director of the U.S. National Security Agency was fired on Thursday. Tim Haw is his name. He's also the head of U.S. Cyber Command. His deputy at the NSA was reportedly dismissed as well and reassigned to the Pentagon's Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Happening today, the U.S. Senate set to start a marathon session aimed at funding President Trump's agenda. The spending plan will include extending tax cuts and finding spending cuts. When it comes to spending cuts, though, Senate Republicans are expected to struggle to approve enough cuts to offset the multi-trillion-dollar price of those tax cuts. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates. Recession fears, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs this year. In volatile markets like what we're dealing with right now, don't sit down on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Instead, take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans are turning to the Birch Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands of people convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against inflation and economic instability with gold? If you'd like to learn more on how to earn physical gold and own it in a tax-sheltered account, text the word America to the number 989898. The Birch Gold Group will send you a free, no-obligation information kit. Again, it's as simple as texting America to the number 989898. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless five-star reviews, trust the Birch Gold Group to help you protect your savings with gold. It took us decades to get into this position, and now so many people are trying to unpack. How long is it going to take you to get out of it, and at what cost? Text the word America to the number 989898 today.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. It is Friday, and it is the second hour of Friday, and I know there's a lot of questions. We're going to be talking about almost everything here, tariffs and markets, and go to members.charliekirk.com. That is members.charliekirk.com, so you can come and ask questions here. Let's go to Gracie first. Gracie, thank you for being a member. Happy Friday. What's on your mind?
Hi, Charlie. How do you feel about where the Republican Party is in light of what's going on with the Texas Capitol right now?
Okay, so you have to enlighten me on what is happening at the Texas Capitol. I actually don't know. So tell me and the audience.
There's not a quorum on the House floor right now.
Okay, so you got to tell me more than that. So what is going on? Educate the audience. So by not a quorum, meaning that the Republicans are not able to
be able to vote.
Okay, so why is that? What is the backstory of that?
About a week ago, Representative Brian Harrison posted, "We've been keeping this a secret," and just all of a sudden said that there's not been a quorum. He called for a quorum, like a roll call to be made. And there wasn't enough people to be able to vote on the House floor. This is ridiculous. But I want to know how you feel about the Republican Party and what we could do about this issue.
It's a great question. Thank you for catching me up to speed on that. It does not shock me. So here's the problem. It's called the red state dilemma. A red state traditionally will have Republicans that are more like Democrats, because Democrats who might be a little bit more moderate, why would they run as Democrats? They'll never actually get any political power. So this is if a Republican state ends up being 10 to 15 points to Republican, states like Nebraska, which I'm going to bring up in a second, states like South Dakota, states like Wyoming, when you have a very aspirational, quasi-narcissistic state senator who wants to get more power, and he really doesn't have that deeply held beliefs. He could be a Republican or a Democrat. He's this kind of a transactional corporate type. Country club. It's like a power-craving sociopathic lizard who will join just whatever party is stronger. They end up joining the Republican Party. And mind you, in California, they joined the Democrat Party. In New York, they joined the Democrat Party. But in Texas, they joined the Republican Party. Now contrast that with the blessing of being in a battleground state. And here's the really ironic part. If your state ends up being not that red, you actually get legitimate Republicans in your state. Like Florida. Now, Florida's changing, where Florida's become so red, they're getting fake Republicans that are now being part of their state legislature. But Florida used to be a battleground state, so they had no fake Republicans. It was Democrats would go be Democrats and Republicans would be Republicans. Probably the best example of where it's a 50-50 state and you get real Republicans and you get real Democrats. I would say Arizona, but I wouldn't say that's the best example. But one that is a pretty productive, and I would say Florida, but it is changing, is states like North Carolina. Now, they have their fair share of moderates, but it's so 50-50 with Democrat governors and Democrats gaining ground that if you're an aspirational Democrat, you go and join the Democrat Party. So it is the red state paradox. It is the dilemma where even though you control Texas by quite a great margin, Democrats say it's a waste of time to go run as a Democrat. I will do a political mailer with myself with a shotgun. I will wear a cowboy hat. I'll put on boots. I'll say, keep Texas, Texas, and vote for me. And then you'll go to the state capitol and really, you're a Democrat. Gracie, thank you for informing us what's going on in Texas. I got to be more up to date on that. I will be honest. I've been looking at markets and macro trends a lot more than that, but thank you for making us aware of it. And thank you for being a member. Members.charliekirk.com. What's on your mind? And please make sure you unmute yourself.
Hi, Charlie.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good. How are you? I was just wondering, I see a lot of podcasters, conservative podcasters have been saying that they feel that signal chat issue is no longer a problem. But then I saw that the DOD IG opened up an investigation into Pete Hegseth, and this feels to me a lot like the things that happened in the first administration. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on whether this is a concern and they're going to try to use this to impeach either Pete Hegseth or the president down the road.
So I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think so. So it is an inspector general report. It's going to come back pretty boring, to be perfectly honest. What's more concerning, though, is that Senator James Lankford, our friend from the great state of Oklahoma, which, by the way, is a perfect kind of connective tissue to the prior question that we just received, which is James Lankford, who is obviously in so many ways not a Republican, not a conservative. He is now pushing for a special investigation into Pete Hegseth's use of Signal. Republican James Lankford from the state of Oklahoma. Of course he is. Pete Hegseth did nothing wrong. It's an approved government device. It's a proved communication methodology. The only person who did something wrong is whoever put Jeffrey Goldberg into that chat, something that we believe to be Mike Waltz and his team, but we're going to wait for the final report to conclude that. And remember, this is the story right here from Politico.com. Lankford calls for Inspector General to investigate Signalgate. So let me tell you, Ann, who is the one that actually triggered and prompted this IG investigation to Pete Hegseth? Republican James Lankford from Oklahoma. That's right. James Lankford is the one that prompted this investigation. Fake Republican ties perfectly into the prior question. Thank you so much, Ann. God bless you. Have a great Friday. Keith, thank you for being a member. What's on your mind? Members.charliekirk.com.
Howdy, Charlie. Thank you so much for taking my question. I'm from College Station. We met at AmFest, and our family's really looking forward to welcoming you to Aggieland here in a few weeks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My kids are getting ready to set up a Bryan College Station regional chapter, so thank you for that leadership.
Phenomenal.
Hey,
Thank
here's
you.
my question. There's so many issues right now that have economic orientation with the tariffs and so much. One of the more painful hidden taxes that directly or indirectly touches all of us are the Obama-era EPA regulations on diesel emission fluid. This is a big deal in Texas, whether for personal cars, tractors, big rigs, delivering all the food that touches all of our shelves. These DEF standards really, they add a lot of hidden cost to a lot of the daily lives of hardworking folks that have, in this era of Trumpian pragmatism. Have you heard any conversations with Lee Zeldin or the president himself about looking at some of these nonsensical mandates? And if not, is this something that you could bring to Mr. Zeldin's attention? Thanks.
Great question. So let me just say one thing and then ask you a question. First of all, Lee Zeldin's doing a great job. He just closed yesterday this ridiculous climate change museum. Literally, we spent $4 million to build a climate change museum that nobody visited. Lee Zeldin just closed it and said, this is ridiculous. We're closing this. Not to mention, Lee Zeldin is fighting every day to reclaim $20 billion in climate grants that were given out at the end of Biden's term. I mean, you want to talk about a racket? That alone is worthy of a massive and major and significant investigation. But let me ask you, Keith, are these EPA rules, are they taxes that are issued by Congress, or are they mandates that were previously given by an EPA administrator? The question I'm asking for a reason.
This is fourth branch of government nonsense. I don't know how familiar you are with how the diesel engines work.
Not very at all.
But it adds extensive. It suffocates a diesel engine in terms of performance. It's an onerous cost. I mean, I drive, for example, a 2015 3/4 ton. It's a diesel engine. We're talking thousands of dollars of cost over the cost of ownership of a vehicle. And every single diesel vehicle has this. Everybody who drives the diesel, you ask anybody you know, they'll talk about how expensive and how cumbersome it is, and it's just another hidden tax at the environmental altar of nonsense.
First of all, thank you for drawing my attention to it. I'm going to text Lee Zeldin this clip of you telling me about it. And so I would imagine with the president's approval, this sounds like something that they need to get rid of. So thank you, Keith. God bless you. And what do they say? Howdy and gig 'em. That's right. Something like that. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Okay. Z Factor from Relief Factor as the formula to help change that. if to help change going to sleep. Z-Factor goes beyond melatonin and uses a combination of 4 natural ingredients. Whether it's falling asleep or staying asleep, so many people are not getting the Z's that they need. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. That is 1-800-4RELIEF. If you're looking for the right formula for better Z's, give Z-Factor a try. So go 46% on your first order. Go to ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. Email me directly, freedom@charliekirk.com. We love hearing from you, and become a member to join this show, members.charliekirk.com. Be right back.
Reset stops here. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Let's go to yrefy.com. That is YREFY.com. Go to yrefy.com. They are phenomenal. And again, next week I'll be at Purdue. I'll be Michigan State and Illinois State University, University of Illinois, South Carolina. We are the hardest working show out there. You will not find a show that travels as much as we do, that does as many meetings, that manages as much stuff. We got well over 1,000 people on staff here at Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action. We're doing the show every single day. So when you guys become a member, helps with all that. YRefi helps make it possible. Feels like the campaign never actually ended. Call 888-YRefi34 or log on to yrefy.com. That is YREFY.com. May not be available in all 50 states. You can take control of your family's budget. So go to yrefy.com. So you'd finally take control of your situation. And YRefi offers a 3-minute rate check without any credit impact. So go to yrefy.com. That is YREFY.com. $45 billion of all student loan debt is labeled as distressed. Go to yrefi.com. That is yrefi.com. May not be available in all 50 states. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. That is the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. Who do we have here? Brandy. Brandy, thank you for being a member. Members.charliekirk.com. What's on your mind?
Hi, I'm a new Republican, and I've been having conversations with my mom, who I feel is apolitical, but, more leaning Democrat. I'm mixed race. And she agrees with me on certain things, but also has made comments where she says she doesn't really want to fully agree because she still has that stereotype of Republicans not being the greatest people. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate this conversation with her, because we do talk a lot. And that is kind of my big conversations right now, because I'm starting to get into education, politics, and things like that. And we were talking about the stabbing that happened yesterday, and she kind of just said, she feels like it's unfortunate certain kids have to talk about certain things or be involved in certain scary things, which I agree, but we also would not be there if these things did not happen. So our kids wouldn't be concerned or fearful in those situations if those type of situations weren't happening to them. So just trying to figure out how to navigate that in a parental conversation. Sorry if it's not in that.
No worries. Thank you, Brandy, for being a member. So, look, first and foremost, the stabbing is a wild story that we haven't discussed. I have intentionally avoided the stabbing of Austin Metcalf as a story to cover on the show because I was so disturbed by the way his father handled it on TV. And therefore, I said, look, he lost his son. He can react however he wants. My sympathies go to the family, but the way that he went on television and basically gave justification for the stabbing of his son and effectively was like, I feel sorry for the guy that stabbed my son. Very, very hard for me to process. Just so everybody understands, he forgave him and said it wasn't racial. Look, forgiveness is a Christian virtue. I think that's superficial forgiveness. I find that hard to believe that just a couple days later you could just say that you forgive him. I think you have to go through a little bit of work and a little bit of wrestling to get there. And of course, it's racial. You have a white son who said, hey, you're not allowed to sit there. And this black student takes out a knife and stabs your son to death. And this should be a huge nationwide news story. And no one is talking about it whatsoever. No one is talking about it. And this white kid was stabbed by this black student. We're supposed to act as if that's acceptable and fine. Could you imagine if a white student stabbed a black kid to death because the black kid said, hey, you're not allowed to sit there? It'd be George Floyd 2.0. They'd all have shirts. It'd be Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. The guy who stabbed Austin Metcalf, his name is Carmelo Anthony with a K. So this white kid is sitting there. Carmelo Anthony takes out a knife and stabs him to death. Again, the father can act and react however he wants. I thought it was a disappointing interview. He should have just stayed silent, or at the very least just said, I'm just in so much heartbreak right now. Instead, he went above and beyond to say it wasn't racial, when obviously, of course, it was racial. And he went on one day after. Okay, so how do you talk to parents when you disagree with them? Look, keep dialogue going. Disagreement is okay. You have to honor your parents. It is a biblical commandment. And I would say this, look, try to be as respectful as possible. I know so many people that have, severe disagreements and they are still able to keep things going. We love debate on the show, but try to keep it civil and try to keep it warm, try to keep it congenial, and try to stay away from insults or throwing names or accusations at one another. So thank you so much, Brandy. God bless you. Okay, I'm going to pause here. We'll have Caroline after the break. Let me just kind of tell you a little bit more about this Austin Metcalf situation. If you're not aware of this story, that is evidence that the propaganda networks that maybe you're getting your information from, they're not doing their job. And you should listen to the Charlie Kirk Show more. You should listen to Salem Radio Network more, to Real America's Voice. Austin Metcalf, it's this heart-wrenching story. He was a football recruit, and literally his identical twin watched him die and be stabbed to death by this black maniac and held him while he died. And the father of Austin Metcalf, which is what made this so controversial, the father went on Fox News, I think it was Fox News or some cable show, the day after, and effectively, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but was like, this isn't racial. We shouldn't make it about the attacker. And again, I pray that I'll never be in that situation. It was an inexplicably bizarre reaction, to be perfectly honest with you. Of course, I am very sympathetic to the idea of forgiving, even when it is very difficult to forgive. However, I'll be honest, I don't believe him that he has forgiven this person, because it just feels like superficial. I would not even be able to speak in such a situation. And then he rushed to say it's not racial one day after, which goes to show, of course, he's making it racial. No one was even thinking that. It's like, instead, he should have just been like, here's my son, here is his memory. Again, prayer should be with the father. He was obviously in a very difficult mental state, but just a bizarre reaction to this should be national news story. We'll be right back.
back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Just into our newsroom, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell says President Trump's latest tariffs and their likely impact on the economy and inflation are, quote, significantly larger than expected. He also says the import taxes are likely to lead to at least a temporary rise in inflation. Meantime, U.S. stock markets are hoping to bounce back today after what experts are calling a tariff-induced free fall on Thursday. The losses are among the worst in the last decade, with the Dow losing 1,600 points and continuing its losses today. The S&P 500 dropped nearly 5%, and the Nasdaq hemorrhaged some 6%. Everything from crude oil to big stocks to the value of the U.S. dollar related to other currencies are feeling the effects of the Trump tariffs. It's an issue that Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed during a meeting with fellow NATO members who likely gave him an earful about President Trump's tariffs.
Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules. So I don't think it's fair to say economies are crashing. Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States. We have to be a country that think we're the largest consumer market in the world, and yet the only thing we export is services. And we need to stop that. We need to get back to a time where we're a country that can make things, and to do that, we have to reset the global order of trade.
China is among the first countries to push back against the tariffs with its own reciprocal 34% duty on all U.S. imports starting next week. Other trade partners are weighing a response as well. That's a quick check of your headlines. We appreciate you being here with us. Now, let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
An all-new greatest American generation. It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. We have a Hillsdale College. Hillsdale is America's greatest college. History, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for an enjoyable refresher. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses, including their newest and latest course on totalitarian novels. In this 8-lecture course, you'll learn from Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn as he goes in depth on 4 novels, 1984, Brave New World, Darkness at Noon, and That Hideous Strength. More importantly, they can show us that faith, family, and friends are worth fighting for. Maybe you read these books a long time ago. Maybe you've heard them others talk about them. They may seem a little intimidating. Let Hillsdale College help you make the most of them. Go to charlieforhillsdale.com now to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That is charlieforhillsdale.com, CHARLIE for Hillsdale.com. America's greatest college. Take their online course on Rome. We'll have Blake come back at some point, but this week's a little crazy. We have the Constitution course, the Winston Churchill course. They are America's greatest and premier learning institution. And guess what? You can learn the same way that Hillsdale College students learn. That's charlieforhillsdale.com, CHARLIE for Hillsdale.com. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast page. Caroline, thank you for being a member. What is on your mind?
Hi, Charlie. Yeah, I was curious about your thoughts on IVF. I know it's something that the Trump administration has, made a priority, and I think that's a great thing. If you kind of do research as a Christian on that, it's difficult to find resources that are pro-life and also support IVF, but I think it's a really good option for people who struggle with infertility and are pro-family. Just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that topic.
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me first start. There's definitely some potential moral issues with IVF that need to be talked about. The first of which is the creation of life without sex. It's actually the inverse of birth control, which is birth control would be sex without life, and IVF would be life without sex. So there's some Brave New World elements of IVF that I think we do need to confront. And Brave New World, as I just talked about the Hillsdale College course, is that Aldous Huxley wrote in the book Brave New World that essentially one day that human beings will be made on factory and assembly lines. They won't be a byproduct of a loving relationship. Basically, it'll be no different than making a Cadillac or a Ford Explorer. You can customize it as you wish, and you can make it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, that there are significant potential human rights issues if we believe that life begins at conception. And so we have to understand that right now there are lots of frozen embryos that are fertilized. We believe those are lives, and they're basically being refrigerated. So that's number two. Number three, I now have to look at the practical side, which is I know people that are IVF children. I know people that have used IVF. In fact, I know people that were IVF kids with surrogacy. There is a way to do IVF in a pro-life way, which would be one fertilized embryo at a time. That is very expensive and, quite honestly, a low likelihood of actually working. So it's a very difficult issue because we need strong nuclear families in this country, and strong nuclear families are a bulwark against Marxism. And these are largely young couples who love children. While I think it should be allowed to continue in a legal way, I would definitely limit it to try to protect all the human rights aspects. But I think we also must have a robust discussion about, do we want human life to be able to be made in a laboratory? I think that's a very serious, let's just say, addressed element of in vitro fertilization. Do we want to get to a place where human life can be made simply and solely in a laboratory? I'm not so sure about that. It is by no means a criticism of people that have used IVF or even people that are benefiting from IVF. I will say, taking a step back, that going through infertility can be one of the hardest things that people have had to go through. It is incredibly aching and heartbreaking. It can go through multiple different iterations of, quite honestly, the closest thing to agonizing torture that good, loving couples have to go through, to be perfectly honest. So it's a very tough situation and tough topic. I tend to lean towards seeing that 90% of the time, people that use IVF are incredibly well-intentioned and want to welcome life. And that is the other more difficult aspect, which it is in some ways the exact moral intent opposite of abortion, where abortion are people that go into a clinic to eliminate life, whereas IVF, people go into a clinic to try to welcome life. So there's no easy answer there. But the Brave New World element is something I think that needs to be addressed. So all that to say, President Trump has embraced it. President Trump is championing it. And I know a lot of people that have used it. And so that's the answer to that question. Okay, let's see here. What is the next member? Is Braden. Braden, thank you for being a member. Members.charliekirk.com. What's on your mind?
How's it going, Charlie? Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
Perfect. I'm great. How are you? So I just had a quick question for you. I'm a freshman at a small, very liberal institution here in Pennsylvania. I actually started a Turning Point chapter on my campus. Result of that, I had lug nuts removed off my car. A wheel almost came off on the highway. I've pretty much been, called everything from Nazi to fascist. Those are the only appropriate ones I can say on here. So due to all this, I've decided that I want to transfer because no matter what I do here, it seems that just number-wise, it's probably 1,200 kids in my school, probably 30 Republicans here, I'd say, or conservatives with conservative beliefs. I've decided to transfer for safety and just happiness. I don't know if I just wanted to get some advice. Do you think I'm doing the right thing?
Well, yeah. So first of all, thank you. I can imagine you don't want to make your school public because of safety, right? I can imagine that's probably the case. If you want to say it, we'd be happy to help you through that. So I guess more importantly, why are you in college?
I'm in college. Well, you probably won't like the answer. I'm in college because honestly, that's what we're taught.
No, but I got it. So why are you in college? Give me an answer.
I'm in college. I'm in college. I chose to come here to play golf and get a degree in economics.
Okay, so to play golf. Got it. So do you think college is necessary for you?
I don't believe it's necessary for me.
Well, then you just answered your question, my friend. So, but look, I mean, everyone has to make your own decision. But if you're being tortured and you're getting like lug nuts off, your car and you're all this, and you're like, hey, I'm taught to go to college, and I don't know why you're there. So, hope that answers your question.
Perfect. It did, and my institution is Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Okay. I actually made a post the other day, and General Mike Flynn even saw it.
Oh, amazing! What do you want to do with your life?
I'd like to get into politics someday. That's really, I know it's a broad statement. I'm not really sure what I want to do with it, whether it's, a political consulting firm or something along that aspect, but I'd like to definitely get into something like what you guys do.
Well, I can tell you, college is definitely the wrong path for you, but I'm glad that you're honest about it and speaking out. And also, I don't think you're going to find a wife at the current school that you're in right now, but you're being very honest and really appreciate it. We'll send you a signed hat and a book. And I hope this is a message to so many other people. And it's not a criticism of you, Braden. You're being honest. But guys, why would you go to college if you know you're not supposed to be there? Just stand up to the institution. Don't do it. All right. Thanks, man. We're here to support you. Love to have you at our events this summer. So thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a great one.
Okay, Matt, what is on your mind? Members.charliekirk.com.
Hey, Charlie. Good afternoon, or at least afternoon on the East Coast. Thanks for everything y'all do. I joined on election night, but this is actually my first live call, and the signed MAGA hat that you sent is prominently positioned on the mantle. So, really appreciate everything y'all do. And I think you guys had a major impact on bringing the election home. And you mentioned a second ago, feels like the campaign never ended. And here in Virginia, I mean, we're already kind of back in campaign mode with a massive set of elections here in Virginia later this fall. And I just wonder, is there any real plan to try to keep at least one of the houses? I think Spanberger, or I call her Spyberger, just given her background and how slippery she is. But if Virginia loses all three, governor and then the both houses, and they're already talking about Raymond through sanctuary state, 9-month abortion, everything. And I just we only need to flip two. Really, it came down to the state house and state senate, a combined 4,000 total votes last time around. But I know Spyberger is going to be a tough one to beat, given her background and her positioning, and with the new draw of the congressional district, she's much more tied in with the Nova crowd, which, as you know, are as crazy as they get.
So I got some of that. You said your state's Virginia, correct? Right? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How is Winsome Sears doing? What is the state of that race?
Okay, so her biggest issue is, I think, for the most part, I would say mostly MAGA, and I think she's come our way over time. I don't think she was, necessarily fully on the team before, and there's still a little bit questionable there. But her problem is that she'll say, hey, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. But in Virginia, the Democrats have like a hard 5-point edge that you have to overcome. Not only have to get every conservative vote, but you have to bring down the negatives of the opponent. And Spanberger's been, preparing herself for this for years. And the only way to win, or to even beat her, or even get close enough to bring one of the state houses over the line, is going to be bringing her negatives down. And I've been talking with some of the local people here about this, and I think I'm starting to see a little bit more aggression. But she's a very tentative candidate. She's not that confident on her public speeches, and I just don't think she's got a full grasp of the messaging. And she certainly doesn't know how to go after Spanberger, who tries to say, "Oh, I'm just a regular mom," but she's as vicious, hardcore left wing as anybody could be, and she's got the deep state pedigree, so she's well trained. And it's concerning. I mean, if Virginia goes, it's the birthplace of the nation. It's and they're going to go full bore if they get the trifecta. And Youngkin's been, in my opinion, maybe the best governor in the country. But we have the 1-term rule here, and so he's out in the fall.
So a couple things. Thank you for that. Virginia, I think, can become a swing state, especially if we bring high prop voters home. We're low on time in this segment. Right. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Virginia. I'm going to be doing an event at University of Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Liberty, and potentially one more like George Mason and VCU. Very big off-year election. But Winsome Sears, we have to bring across the finish line. Honestly, a lot of it is going to be contingent on the economy. We'll be right back.
Stop watching the news and start making some. The Charlie Kirk Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to our podcast. Open up your podcast application and type in Charlie Kirk Show. That is a amazing thing that's happening right now. Breaking news. President Trump has just signed another executive order extending TikTok. So we were thinking of, is there going to be a TikTok deal? There was a lot of reporting on it. Looks like TikTok will be operational another 75 days from now. So this will go into the summer. So that is some breaking news happening here on the Charlie Kirk Show. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to our podcast. The podcast is doing very well. This weekend, we have some phenomenal new episodes coming out. So make sure you guys subscribe, and I will see you on Monday at the University of South Carolina. Stay right there. We're going through. Okay. So I guess we're at, okay, let's go to some members then. Benjamin, what's on your mind? Thanks for being a member. Members.charliekirk.com.
Hey, Charlie, God bless you and your family. Now that extends out to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Is there a law that will considers underage mental abuse or child neglect if a child has like a gender dysphoria condition and the parent or guardian manipulates that child's mind or thought process through coercion of like doing a sex change or hormone suppressors? And if there isn't, is there one in the works?
That's a really good question. So the answer is not really. It's very difficult. I think we first have to go after the teachers and the doctors. I think we got to go after the doctors, especially the ones that are prescribing this. It's so hard because some of these parents are so well-intentioned that they are essentially held hostage, and they too are medically kidnapped by the system. When a parent who's very involved is told by a doctor, if you do not allow your daughter to medically transition, then they're going to commit suicide. Would you rather have a dead son or a dead daughter or an alive son? Effectively holding them hostage. We'll be right back, everybody. Okay, everybody, the Herzog Foundation. Check it out right now. Are you rethinking your kid's educational path, wondering if their current school truly supports your family's values? You're not alone, and the Herzog Foundation is here to help. With the Trump administration working to abolish the federal Department of Education and return control to the states, there's never been a better time to explore Christian education. For too long, federal overreach has dictated how children learn. But now parents have a great say in their kids' future. So check it out right now. That is readlion.com to stay updated on the latest developments from the Trump administration and how they impact education. Turn to The Lion, the Herzog Foundation's award-winning publication. The Lion offers real-time news and insights to keep you informed and empowered. Visit readlion.com. That is readlion.com. Stay informed, stay equipped, and shape your child's future. Portions of the Charlie Kirk Show are brought to you in part by the Herzog Foundation and The Lion. That is readlion.com. Tiffany, thank you for being a member. Really appreciate it. What is on your mind?
Yes, my question is regarding the tariffs, and I'm curious to get your opinion. I work with a gentleman that's very liberal, and he thinks that everyone that's recently retired as the stock market is crashing, in his words, are suicidal and frustrated with that, and doesn't think the stocks are going to bounce back as quickly.
So that is a short-term analysis. Here's what I don't want to do, and I think it's very important. I'm not going to dismiss or, let's say, rationalize financial suffering. People are hurting right now. Obviously, the market's down. I believe this will be short-lived. I believe if you take the long-term perspective with tax cuts, no tax on tips, deregulation, economic boom, major investment, that this thing is going to grow. Remember, algorithms run most of the market. So I think you'd say to your friend, look, let's talk at the end of the year. Let's talk at the end of next year. Investing is a long-term game. If you are investing just for a 24-hour news cycle, then you are going to be in a tough spot. Interest rates are falling, which can make homes easier to buy. But what I don't want to do is what the Democrats did is said, oh, everything's perfectly fine, everything. When stocks go down, people are going to see a material drop at that time. My rule is this: look at your investments once every 6 months. I think it's really unhealthy if you open up your Schwab or your TD Ameritrade app or your Interactive Brokers app every single day, unless you are a day trader. If you're a day trader, fine. But if you're a long-term investor of 401ks, do yourself a favor. Unless you have immediate and pressing liquidity needs, which is possible, unless you are in highly sophisticated trading and it's your profession. But if you are a retiree and you do not have immediate liquidity needs, do yourself a favor. Delete that app from your phone and open it up in 6 months. Stocks are not meant to be a casino. It is not meant to be DraftKings, where you are betting on whether or not Josh Allen is going to do a super boost and run for a touchdown and throw a touchdown. I get that it's not ideal, that the market is down a couple thousand points. I'm down. You're down. We're all invested in the long-term bullish perspective of America. But I'm still incredibly long on America, and I think you guys should be too. Dollar cost average is a great way to invest. Do some every quarter, and don't look at your portfolio every day. It will drive you insane, and it does nobody any good. Okay. Brandon, you are the last question. What is on your mind?
Morning, Charlie. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
Good. So my question is, just in general, what advice do you have for someone trying to write a book?
I'll try to write a book. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Well, it's so funny. I'm actually writing my Sabbath book right now. Is first and foremost, you have to write about something you are very clear about. You have to have a great hypothesis, a great argument, a great contention. Basically, a book should be an argument, unless you're writing a novel, right? That's a whole separate thing. My argument is that the Sabbath is good for me and good for society, and people should adopt it into their life, and I'm going to tell you why. That's a lot to work on. You have to have a passion about it. And finally, compartmentalize it. Start small. Write a little bit every single day. If you write for 5 to 10 minutes a day, the real person you should be asking the question of is Blake. Blake writes a lot of books. He's prolific. He helped me with my last book significantly, Right Wing Revolution. He's got a whole bunch. He's got a whole thing. He basically doesn't sleep for 3 days and takes all sorts of interesting substances and poof, there's a book. But he's different. So actually, Blake can help answer this question on the members page. Blake can write like a paragraph of advice how to write a book. I think that's a good way. Thank you, Brandon. God bless you, and Shabbat Shalom. Consistency, he says, is key. Consistency. Become a member, members.charliekirk.com. That is members.charliekirk.com. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created order out of chaos every Friday night. You should celebrate that with gratitude, awe, and wonder, regardless of what is happening on the news cycle. Thank God for creation, and I will see you guys on Monday. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.